there is there is 0% chance that everything is going to work correctly, because we had like I text Nick and Nick from Christ is the Cure, and I said, listen, man, you gotta like talk me down, because I'm moments away from throwing everything away that's in my basement, technological. Because as always, if somebody wants to buy me professional gear for software, that would be fantastic, because OBS is really just getting on my last nerve. I always come down, like I said, I always come down early, and I try to get the software set up, make sure everything's running smoothly. And even with a week off, still seems to mess up. I don't get it. But anyways, we are back. Took a little break, took a week off. And as we begin, there's a couple of things that I wanted to mention about that break and what happened during the break. I don't really know if I should say what happened, but something that I did during the break. Maybe that's a better way of describing it. So leading up to this break, this would have been probably, gosh, what day was that? It would have been Tuesday that I started planning out what this would look like, as far as like taking a couple of days off. You know, maybe seeing what I could do as far as like a reset. And so I did a reset on, officially would have been Thursday, on the advice of my wife and some others, that maybe taking a little bit of a breather would be good. So I did that. So starting Thursday, I actually did like a quick little social media break. And I didn't announce it, mainly because, so if you have done a social media break and you've announced it, like, that's fine. I'm not trying to like jab at you or anything. That's just not my thing. Like, I think it's weird when you take a social media break, but yet you announce it on social media. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if you're on Facebook to keep in touch with like family members and things like that, and you need to let them know that like you're going to be unavailable, I completely understand. But I often see times that, people are just like, oh, I'm just over this and that, and I don't want to see any more articles about this guy and blah, blah, blah. So I'm taking a social media break. And, they're either way. So yeah, that was Thursday. I deleted all the apps from my phone. I didn't even cheat. Like, I didn't even jump on my laptop or anything to I didn't touch social media at all for 4 days, like 4.5 days, really, to be honest. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but for me, that's a year long. It might as well be. Because as you know, I mean, obviously, like with this platform, I spend a lot of time on the internet, and there's a lot of groups that I manage, and a lot of things that I'm just a part of that are strictly on social media. And so there is a lot of time and energy that I put into, running a bunch of different things. And I have a business that deals with internet stuff. And so I am just always online. And what became clear, well, I guess I shouldn't say what became clear, because this is something that it's not like I was unaware of this. Like, I know that social media has a huge grip on me. Like I didn't go into this thinking like, oh, I can't wait to see like how, if social media really is that much. Like, I know that it is. I've known that it is for a long time. I know that I spend too much time on, my phone, just kind of scrolling around, not even doing anything bad, just spending time, wasting time. Whether it be to procrastinate on something that I have to do, whether it be just because I'm tired, whether it be whatever the case is. But I know that I do that a lot. And I also know that there's a lot of noise that comes with that. And it can be real easy, especially in the nature of what I do with this platform. It's real easy to allow comparison to sort of steal your joy from doing what you like to do. And so that was kind of what happened leading up to last Thursday. That was part of my thinking. And just, I wanted to kind of disconnect and get some of my priorities straight, and, focus really just upon like like things that I was focusing on in the past and have kind of lost sight of them. And so I did. That was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I started back up, today's today, Tuesday, yesterday. I started back up yesterday. But what I've done, and this is kind of what I'm going to try to do moving forward. So my big platforms, YouTube's obviously number one. I spend a lot of time with YouTube, and that's kind of our big platform that we've put a lot of content on, and so I like YouTube. We also have Facebook. We also have Instagram. And then personally, I have Twitter. And Twitter has been one of my best friends for, I mean, even before, like, when people didn't know what Twitter was, I was there. I've been all in on Twitter since the mid-2000s, really. Mid to late 2000s. So what I did was I did not install the apps back on my phone, okay? I set up a Chrome extension that actually blocks your news feed from appearing when you go on Facebook. I did some research because I needed to be able to still receive notifications, and I needed to be able to reply to those notifications and see what's going on in some of the groups. And so I wanted to figure out a way that I could do that, but I didn't want to be tempted to just like jump on Facebook and scroll through the timeline and do all of that. So I found this really cool extension, and I forgot to pull the name up. But I found this really cool extension that allows you to block the Facebook newsfeed. You can still access all the features of Facebook. It's just when you jump on Facebook, it's just a blank page for your newsfeed. Fantastic. So that was step number one. Step number two was turning notifications off. That was another thing. The phone's just always, it's always going off. And so what I've noticed is when I have, Nick and I were actually just talking about this yesterday. The goal will be to like allow myself to get to the point to where I leave my phone in other rooms and things like that. I mean, I'll admit I'm not quite at that point yet, and I try to here and there, but I'm trying to like ease into this and not try to go completely overhaul in one day, because I know that won't work. So I'm trying to like turn notifications off and be a little bit more aware of those, because when Rory's here, when the notification goes off and I'm working on something, I look at the notification, I instantly pick up my phone, and I'm gone. Like I'm already 3 pages deep on Facebook, or whatever I see kind of that catches my eye. I never just pick up my phone, look at the notification, I put it down, and go back to what I was working on. It's always something I do. So that was number one, was to turn off notifications. And I don't mean like text message notifications. I mean just notifications from apps that I don't need to know right away. I can manually check that stuff. So I turned that off. And then, as I mentioned, I did not reinstall the apps. So, Twitter and Instagram, for example, those are 2 apps that I spent the most time just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Now, there's also a good side to those apps. And this is kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight with our understanding of like social media being a good thing. I don't want to paint the picture that it is always bad and that we all need to delete our apps and things like that, because I think that's the complete opposite of what I would encourage you to do. I would say, though, that if we're honest, the majority of our time on social media is not spent in a good way. And again, I'm not talking about like a sinful way. I'm just talking about we're wasting time. Twitter and Instagram were those 2 things that I was wasting a lot of time on. So I decided I'm not putting those apps back on. I can still jump on and access them. The Instagram part of it, though, Twitter is a little different. There's a lot of people that I interact with on Twitter. But what has happened over a while now, 3 years now, I think, maybe, I've become close with a lot of these guys, and we have other ways that we keep in touch. So it's not just like we're tagging each other in tweets, and I talk to them once a week or once a month. There's a lot of guys I talk to on a consistent basis. I still have ways to keep in touch with them. I either have their phone number or we have connections via a messaging app. And so that was like one of the things is I enjoy like the conversation that I have with these guys. So I didn't want to completely, and that's another thing that I noticed. when I was gone for those 4 days, I honestly talked to, again, I told maybe one or two people that I was going to do this, and I was just looking for some advice and some feedback, and some of the guys that I really trust their opinions and their feedback on stuff. I always will bounce an idea off of them or something, and so I did that, and I got some feedback, and I was trying to decide how I wanted to set this up. Like, did I want to message everybody that I normally talk to and say I'm not going to be on, I'm okay, but I'm not going to be there. And I just decided I just would, kind of pull back. But I noticed like I missed that sense of community. It's weird because what happens when, I've been doing this, a long time now. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like if you make a podcast and you can last longer than 6 months, you've been doing it for a while. And I've been really lucky to meet and to talk with a lot of really solid guys that have encouraged me a lot. And so that community is something that I look forward to. And I noticed that that was something I missed because I've set up my social media feeds that all of the stuff that I see is encouraging. I don't follow any accounts that are gonna lead me into sin or to cause me to stumble. I don't. I mean, I think that's the first thing you need to do is to evaluate like the social media accounts that you follow, and are they encouraging you to grow closer to Christ, or are they causing you to go away from Christ? That's definitely number one, because if you're trying to look at social media from a sense of how can I use this as a resource to help my growth in Christ, that's got to be the first thing, is you have to have people around you that are going to help you to do that and not cause you to go in the opposite direction. So I realized, though, during these couple of days that I was missing that. I was missing that sense of community. I was missing seeing the posts, and I was missing reading the articles and all that. So that was like number one that I noticed. But then number two, I noticed how subconsciously I would go to reach for my phone and automatically go towards where the app was on my phone without even thinking. I just move my thumb and I know exactly where it is. And I texted my wife and I said, I was aware of all of this before. I knew this was a thing. But to actually see it like playing out, and to experience like that thought enter your head and it cause your thumb to move, and like you don't do any of that, it just kind of naturally happens. It's really it's strange. I mean, I read a book by Cal Newport called Digital Minimalism like a year or two ago, maybe. That was the first time where I was like, I got to do something about my phone usage. And I did some small things, and they didn't stick, just to be honest. They did not. Kind of got into some bad habits again. But it put the idea in my head of, where do I need to actually make changes with my social media use? And so that was something that I knew, but I also got further confirmation of like how much it actually was a thing of mine. So what I've done as far as, because again, like I always say this to people, like if you're struggling with watching Netflix too much, if you're struggling with watching YouTube too much, the answer is not to throw away all your screens. That I think you're just setting yourself up for failure. I think that's wrong. I think you need to replace those activities with something that's good. So start to subscribe to a bunch of channels on YouTube that play sermons. Start to engage in watching stuff like that that's going to cause you to grow theologically. And instead of watching The Office for the 15th time through, like that we're doing right now, you can set up yourself to watch sermons and set up yourself to watch things that are going to cause you to grow and to get into the Bible more. That's something I always encourage people to do. So with social media, what I've tried to do is to replace, my apps that I always jumped to, and I moved things around. I moved them to be more accessible. So I have all of the apps that I need for theology in one folder right on my main screen. It's the first thing I see. And so now when I have that instinct to grab my phone, I can go to that folder. What I've also noticed is even in these just couple of days, how much more I have jumped into one of my Bible apps, or how much more I have been able to just like sit down and sort of disconnect for a moment, which was something that I saw myself not being able to do. there's this always this sense of noise going on, or they call it FOMO, the fear of missing out. And you're always aware of what's going on social media because you're on it all the time. So when you're not on it, you think, what am I missing out on? And I mean, like if we're honest, we're not really missing out on anything, right? Because if it's something important, if it's a a friend or a family member, they're going to have a way to get a hold of you, and it's not going to be like posting on your Facebook wall, and you're only going to see it if you log on to Facebook. Like, they're going to have a way to get a hold of you. Yet we still think that got to be on Facebook because you never know what's going to happen. So that's a part of why I like social media so much, just because I like to know. I just like to know. I like to know stuff when it happens. I like to know the breaking news, and I it's like kind of like a joke that my wife and I have. Like, every time that she says, like, "Hey, did you hear about this?" and I'm like, "Yeah, it's like 4 days old. Like, that was a week ago," and it's because like I realize like that's stuff that I'm like that like I enjoy that stuff. Like I'm always intrigued by that stuff. And so that's just a part that I needed to work on as well. So again, I've replaced the apps. I haven't put them back on my phone, and I've moved some apps around to try to set myself up for a little bit more of success, I guess is the way to describe it. But again, I'm not like, I didn't leave this now. Again, and I know you're like probably thinking 4 days. I could do 4 days. Like, well, go ahead and do it. That's because like to me, like 4 days was a long time. 24 hours is a long time to me, because it's been a part of my life for a really long time. And I didn't expect to like quit social media when I got done with this. My goal was to take a couple of days off and just sort of use my time to focus more in on Christ, and try to like use that time to redeem the time, to make wise use of our time, because the days are short. And so I did that, and I think it was a good thing. I think what I will try to do is to incorporate something like that into like my rotation every so often, to where I'm allowing myself just some time away, and to again, because you can't just like not be in social media. You've got to do something to replace that time with. So what are you going to do to redeem that time? And I think that is where I have seen very quickly, in just 4 days, I saw some fruit from that. I saw myself being a little bit more engaged in things that I had drifted away from because I was just spending too much time on social media. Plain and simple. Again, nothing bad, just spending too much time on social media. Now, there is a lot of good with social media, and so that's part 2 is what I'm going to talk about. This is very obviously like it's very important to me that we use social media to grow in our knowledge of Christ, to make much of Christ, to point others to Christ, to help others hear about Christ. It's 2020. And I say this all the time. Like, I'm sitting in my basement in my little corner of Northeast Ohio, and I am broadcasting around the world. And you could tune in and you could watch, and we could talk about Christ, and then you can message me later on, and I can share resources with you, and we can ask questions back and forth, and we can talk, and that's just part of normal life. Like, that's not anything that we're like, oh my gosh, can you believe that we do this? Like, it's just part of life now. And this is like a ministry field. It is, because we are well beyond the chance of the internet going somewhere. The internet is not going anywhere. And in fact, the internet is actually causing us to interact with people that we would have never had the chance to interact with before, therefore giving us a larger platform, giving us the chance to share Christ with somebody who we might not have ever encountered. And so I think that we need to look at social media in that manner. I think that we need to realize that social media is not something that is always bad. Again, there are, bad things that you can do with social media. And I think you also need to hear that if you are using social media in a sinful way, don't try to justify your use of social media because you think you're going to use it for good. If it's really that much of a problem, then you need to stay off of it completely. Or if you have, hey, exposit the word is here. Look at that. Represent exposit the word. That's pretty cool. um, they don't set yourself up for failure, basically. Don't think that you've got to use social media as a ministry field, because that might not be what you're called to do. And if it's going to set you up for failure, then by all means, don't use that. Or if you really do feel like that this is something that you are to do, then set yourself up for success by putting apps on your phone that allow you to block certain content. Get somebody who can be like an accountability partner for you and have them lock these apps, and they know the password and not yourself. So there's no way for you to get around any of this stuff. If you have a spouse and you want to share with your spouse what you're trying to do, and have her have access to it, so that way you have some sort of tracking system that people know about, so you're not as tempted. But again, if it comes down to it that you really are that concerned that you are going to be drawn away using social media, then don't do it. It's not for everybody. There's a certain breed of us that I think we're called to do that. I think our platform is to do podcasts and to do video teaching and to do articles and to do web stuff and to have community groups and things like that. I think that's just a part of our life nowadays. And again, the internet is not going anywhere, and I think we should use it to make much of Christ. I think we have as many resources as you want available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I think just at the end of the day, we are, we're kind of without excuse. We always joke around, guys that I'm a big Logos fan, you know that. And so guys that I talk to about Logos, we're always saying, like, what would Paul have done with Logos? Like, can you imagine like him seeing this software and not using it as much as he could? And to think about being able to preach and teach on a daily basis, right? And what Peter would have said to that, and how he would have taken advantage of that, and so many of our pieces of technology that allow us. I mean, if you have a cell phone, you have access to the world. You have a platform now. You can create any sort of account and go online and start talking to people, and they will listen to you. Might not be a lot of people, but you're getting your stuff out there, which is also part of kind of like the problem, but also motivation to do like what we're doing here. A lot of times on the platform, we will discuss like things that we see online. We'll discuss so-and-so's sermon. We'll discuss so-and-so's article. We'll discuss, a post that we saw or whatever it is. We see that a lot. That's where we get into that area of like, well, maybe if social media wasn't around, we wouldn't have certain issues in the church today, or we wouldn't have certain false teachers that have these huge platforms, because that's how they've gotten out to the world, is through social media. And I don't necessarily think that is 100% true. I think you can see these books and audio cassette tapes and the movement of resources across the pond, so to say, and how the prosperity gospel has spread to other countries. And it has not exclusively done it via the internet. It's done it in other ways. It has spread through print and through audio. So it's not necessarily through the internet only. The internet has certainly amplified it. So the conversation I always have with people then is, okay, so if there's all this stuff going on via the internet, false teaching and an outpouring of poor theology that people are being exposed to, and going to Google and typing in what does it mean to be a Christian, and just horrible results coming up, and then we wonder why people all across the world have this really poor view of what American Christianity is, because what you're putting out there is not biblical Christianity. And so we wonder, like, why are people, why don't we have more people that are attending church? Why are more people not excited about studying the Bible? Why are, and so on and so on and so on. Well, I don't think it takes long to sort of browse around and see what's popular, and to understand what is drawing people, into the seats. Like I purged from this. I was a part of, because I do social media for churches, and that's part of my business. So I was a part of these church social media groups via Facebook. because every once in a while there'd be a good resource or something, or, I'd see like a thread and I would learn something about. That's why I was a part of it. I wanted to know what was going on. The amount of even poor theology in a group like that, the what they're using social media for. I saw a thing yesterday, something called Church Boom, I think it is. There's a local guy. Um, he works for this organ. I don't know what. Either way, he posted something I saw, and it said like, "Pastor, here's 12 months of your sermons ready for you, just a free download." And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" And so the idea behind this company, Church Boom, is that the pastor is not just preaching a sermon. He's got all kinds of stuff to do, and I 1,000% agree. I actually agree. A lot more than I can describe. Because if the pastor was just called to preach and teach and to disciple, we would have, that would be very good. So I agree with that. I agree that the pastor is called to do too many things, way too much. But the premise then behind that is, well, let's remove your planning of your teaching. Let's remove your preaching calendar. Let's remove you having to even worry about that. Here's 12 months for you. And and so you have to put your email address in, put your name in and stuff. They send you a link to download. They're just trying to get traffic. I understand the business. Hooking the switch and bait. I get it. So I did. I wanted to see what it was. And you actually can download 12 months worth of sermon series with all of the images and the graphics and all of this stuff. And I thought to myself, okay, there's your free download of 12 months worth of sermon series. You're giving it away across the country. And now hundreds, if not thousands of churches for the next year are going to be preaching the exact same message. The exact same watered down message. One of the things I saw was the church series, or the sermon series was called My Church is Cooler Than Your Church. That was one of the sermon series. One of the sermons, I was going to pull it up and kind of talk about some of them, but I'm trying to make a point with what I'm saying, why I'm even bringing that up. Because that's what's out there. Okay? That's what's being pushed, right? Like, here's 12 months worth of work for you done. Don't worry about it anymore. You have now just taken away the primary function of what the pastor is supposed to do. And you have now eliminated the need for any sort of solid exegetical work, because here are these sermon series that are about what cool movies your congregation should watch, and how to be a better person, and how you should high five your neighbor. You're not spending any time in the Word. Like if you're teaching a message that causes your congregants to not be in the Word, why are they inspired to be in the Word on Wednesday nights, or why are they inspired to be in the Word with their social media? I don't think they are. So then you get into this cycle where it's like, okay, well, all you're doing is you're producing the same type of watered down message. And then we kind of wonder, well, why are we not drawing more people into the church? I think it was a United Methodist Church. I saw a United Methodist Church, or either I don't know if it's United Methodist. I think it's United Methodist. My wife was telling me about it. They told their older congregants that it's time for them to stay home and maybe go to another church, or actually adamantly go to another church, because they are not seeing the youth come in. And so they think in order to rebrand their church that the old people need to leave. The seasoned members of the church need to leave. And I thought to myself, that's heartbreaking. Like I could never imagine being a pastor and standing up in front of my people and saying, hey, listen, if you've been at this church for X amount of years, I think it's time for you to move on. I really do. Like we're not relevant to the culture anymore, and so what's actually causing problems is young people walk into this church and they see all these old people, and they go to somewhere else. They go to Happy Clappy down the street, and so we would like you to go somewhere else too, in order for us to bring in new people and to redesign and rebrand the church. I breaks that stuff just breaks my heart. Like when I hear things like that. And I mean, part of that component is the internet, right? Because these types of churches are so popular now. These little Amazon in a box churches, I call them, that you could just go and you can download 12 months worth of graphics and bumper stickers and signs and all that, and you've got your sermon series planned out for the year. Okay, but now so do all these other churches, and they have the exact same message as your church. So what you've now created is a bunch of little mini churches that look exactly the same. And what you've done now is like younger unbelievers, like let's say 18 to 30, like let's say that realm. Like they're not dumb, okay? Like they understand what's going on in the church system with that type of stuff. Like they see that, and they see it throughout all of the churches. Like there's hundreds of churches that they'll interact with that have the same exact system. And so you have to think in the back of their heads, they're going, well, what's any different? I've seen this church 100 times. What makes it any different? If it was working, why isn't there? Why are these churches not like? Why aren't they growing? Why do they keep popping up everywhere? Why are they, the same type of? We're going to reach the culture with, coffee shops and big lights and fog and movie Frozen Christmas series and all of these things that the church is trying to use in order to gain relevancy with younger people. And again, the internet is, it's not to blame, of course, but it's the avenue by which this stuff is spreading. So they're now, again, back to whatever original point that I was trying to make is what do we do? Because I've had conversations with people before that have said, you'd be surprised, and I say this as sarcastically as I can, so let me just preface that before I say it. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that don't think that doing this is actually beneficial. I know. But it's true. Like, I've had, people call me some choice names because of doing this. They think I could be better spending my time doing something else. And maybe that's true. I don't think it is. But anyways, I've had people tell me that, like, listen, like, you just got to let them do what they're going to do. You're not going to be able to stop it. What's the point? Why do you waste your time? Okay. Well, I've also interacted with people who have said the same thing about, the Mormon down the street. Well, they're just going to be Mormons. What are you going to do about it? Focus on something else. Can you see how our judgment now is all across the board? Like, well, what are we going to do about it? Can't do anything about it, so who cares? Let's just focus in on ourselves, right? Now, again, I'm not saying that like you need to completely, change careers and become some like social media ministry person. Like that's not what everybody called to. Like there's plenty of people that are doing podcasts and stuff online, and there's a lot of the big name people in Christianity that have these huge platforms that don't need to be there. Plain and simple, they don't need to be there. Again, and I like if you go to Google and you just look at the results of pastors that come up, some of them, it's not good. You got to go a long way down the list before you get to, the solid people. And I mean, again, I just like I have a real problem with that. If you go to Google and you type in doctors near me, let's say, you are going to want to go to a doctor that has good ratings, right? You can go look at their WebMD profile or whatever site that they're on, and you can see reviews that people have left about them. If they have bad reviews, what are you going to do? You're going to look for another doctor, and that's okay, right? Nobody would look at you and think like, well, there's going to be bad doctors out there because it's the internet. You're going to be applauded for caring so much about your family that you're not willing to put them at risk by taking them to a doctor that has 2.4 stars on Google, right? You're not going to take them to a doctor after you do some research and you find out some stuff from people that have been to this doctor and they've left poor reviews on the office. Just unfriendly staff, or the office was dirty, or even worse, the doctor didn't know what he was talking about. It's probably pretty bad, right? Doctor has spent X amount of years in medical school and being an intern and doing rotations and all those other medical terms. And he's now a doctor, right? He's an official doctor. He's got his own place and he's practicing medicine. He's had the training and he's put in the time and effort, and by now he should be a doctor. He should be a pretty solid guy, right? And he's still having problems. Okay, so something's wrong. Like what is wrong? Well, now you are faced with the task of your friend coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a new doctor. Our doctor is moving, and so I need a new family doctor." What are you going to do? Are you going to recommend, Doctor No Good down the street? You're not going to do that to a friend, are you? Right? You're not going to recommend to them a bad doctor. Or are you going to say, well, I was in this similar situation a couple of years ago, and we did some research, and we actually found that there's this really great doctor down the road, and we would encourage you to go to there. So then let's say, well, friend says that so-and-so doctor is really good, and I'd like to go to this person. Have you heard of that person? And you think about the 2.4 stars that this guy got on Google, or you think about the reviews that you've read, or you think about the article that you read about this doctor, or your friend's conversation that you had about this doctor. And you are now faced with the task of, what do? Do you tell this friend, like, stay away from that doctor? They have their doctor skills are not good. Like, you will be risking your life, literally. I mean, think about it. Like, if you go to a bad doctor, like, that doesn't come off as a surprise, right? So how much more then are we to be careful with those who are entrusted to take care of our eternity? Not to minimize the importance of doctors in our communities, and not to minimize the severity of illnesses and disease and sickness and all of those things, not to minimize that. But simply to say, if we're that careful with our earthly doctors, our doctors that are taking care of us while we're here, why is it a problem that we care about those that are taking care of us on our way to heaven? I mean, it seems obvious, right? It seems that that's of utmost importance, because if you're a Christian, you are following Christ today to be with him tomorrow, right? That is our goal. That's what we strive and we toil for. Paul says what? It's far better for me to depart and be with Christ, right? That's his goal. But he says, I'm going to stay here on behalf of you. So if you're going to stay here on behalf of the people that are around you, don't you want to make good use of that time? And I think somebody just posted, where did it go? Josh said, churches are so scared to offend anyone that they have cookie cutter sermons. That's what's happening. Okay. We have, like, here's a thing. And I don't mean this in, like, this is going to come off as, I'm not trying to be like condescending or joking or anything like that. Ask the Christians around you. Are you supposed to judge other believers? And watch what their reaction is. They'll say, first off, they might not know Matthew 7 is the chapter that they say that where it says judge not. But they'll say the Bible says not to judge others, right? That's oftentimes what happens. So the cookie cutter Christianity that is being proclaimed is that we're not supposed to judge other believers. So when you are using discernment to evaluate somebody who is teaching and preaching on the internet, and you say to so-and-so, this person is wrong in their theology, and this is why, their response is, you're not supposed to judge other believers. We're not supposed to judge other believers. And then take it even a step further, that's because a lot of people don't know the Bible. And I'm certainly not a Bible expert. And in fact, those of us that are studying the Bible on a consistent basis come to realize more and more that we don't know anything about the Bible, because we're constantly learning and we're constantly being taught. And I don't mean that like in a serious way. Like you grow in your knowledge of the Bible, and you can see yourself from one like level of knowledge to the next as you grow in your understanding of Scripture. That's what it comes down to. But a lot of people don't understand the Bible. And I'm not talking about being able to do a 7-part series on the hypostatic union between Christ and the Father. Like, I'm not talking about something crazy like that. I'm talking about, like, let's talk about, like, what it means to judge other believers. Like, and give me an articulation of what the gospel is. Even that simple question. Because, like, oftentimes, like, we assume, like, if you're a Christian, like, you know what the gospel is. And maybe it's just my experience. Maybe I'm unique. I don't think that it's just my experience. I think there's a lot of people that can echo this. There's a lot of people that are Christians that don't know what the gospel is. I heard a gospel presentation once that it was that Christ came to cover up the mistakes that you've made in your past, and that he's came to make you a good person. And if you just confess and you say his name and you pray this prayer, you're his buddy now. He's on your team. You're okay. We've missed a lot with that. I don't think we need to elaborate more on that. But what happens then is that Christian who does not understand the gospel has now articulated their understanding of the gospel to those that are around them. So now 3 people think that the gospel is that your oopsie daisies are now covered up because of Christ, and he's your buddy, right? So then those 3 people go, and they've got 10 people now that they've done this with. And then there's 20 people, and there's 40, and you see how this progresses, right? And so what's happened even more then is bring in the internet. And the internet has caused that message to get out quicker, to get out farther, to do a lot of damage. To cause people to be led astray, to cause people to be caught up with poor teaching, with bad theology. So then when they have a conversation with somebody, it's not a good conversation. And am I talking about, like, they're not at that, like, you know how the book of Hebrews says by this time you should be teachers, but instead you need to go back to milk. You're not ready for solid food. I'm not even talking about that level. I'm talking about just being able to give a defense for why you are a Christian, like a basic understanding of, like, if somebody comes up to you and says, "Why are you a Christian?" Like, what is your foundation for believing in Christ? How do you answer that question? A lot of times, I don't think people know how to answer that. And so then, to take it even a step further, if you've got in your mind you don't know how to answer that question, or if you had an experience once before where, and I'm not talking about, like a lot of times, like, people will say to me they don't want to evangelize because they think they're going to get asked a question that they're not going to know the answer to. I'm not talking about some real in-depth theological question. I'm talking about a Muslim coming up to you and saying, like, we believe in the same God, don't we? I believe in God the Father, right? What's the difference between our religion? Like, what's my reasoning for leaving this religion to come follow Christianity? We believe in the same one, right? We're all roads are leading to the same God. We're both going to get there one day, and it's all going to be fine. And so, what does that Christian do? Well, do they really believe in the same God? Like, I didn't know that. Okay, yeah, I guess you're right then. And off they go. And people of other religions are often, they are smart. They are, they know what they believe, is what it comes down to. They know what they believe. And they often make Christians look bad because they, like, go to an apologetics class once and learn from somebody who does apologetics, like they know the questions that are being asked, and just evaluate those questions. And if you were in that situation, would you be able to give a defense, the apologia, right, for the hope that is in you? Like, would you be able to answer that in a way that leaves that person who's of another religion, who leaves that person taking away from that conversation, I really need to evaluate my faith because I had an understanding from this Christian that they knew what they were talking about. Often, too, like, even the interaction with an unbeliever, or even the interaction with somebody who's of another religion, if they can sense that you know what you're talking about, they are first automatically kind of off guard now because they are so used to interacting with people who don't quite know what they believe. Now they've got somebody who knows what they're doing, right? It's almost like if, like when you're playing cards and you think you're good at cards, but then you play against somebody who's really good at cards, and you're just, it doesn't, like, you're not playing the cards at that point, you're playing the other person. It doesn't matter what two cards they have in their hand. That's kind of what happens when a person of another faith interacts with a Christian who knows what they're talking about. They have now sort of like, whoa, like this now changes everything because this person has a knowledge of what they believe in. But number two, it also shows that this person cares about what they believe in. Because anytime that you believe in something or anytime that you are passionate about something, you naturally learn about it. I don't even need to go to the examples. We know, movie quotes and how all these things that we just fill our minds with. Like I can quote random TV shows and I can hear one word and it makes me think of a quote from a show, and I can look at my wife and just say a one-liner. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. All of this stuff that we know, it's gotten into our brains somehow because we care about it. Right? We're passionate about something, and that's why we know about it. And that's not a problem. It's never looked upon as a problem. But if you truthfully care about Christianity, and if you truthfully care about Christ, then I it's not much to ask to know about. Like the Bible, if it is, again, I always say this, if the Bible is the Word of God, and in fact is, we believe it to be. But if the Bible is the Word of God, you have to do something with it. That's big, right? Jesus said what? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man, nobody comes to the Father except by me. You have two options with that statement. One, it's not a true statement. And if that's not a true statement, then the rest of the Bible is false, and then our conversation is over. But the statement is true. And if that statement's true, then the Bible's true. That's a pretty strong statement to make. And if that is true, again, we believe it to be true, what do you do with the rest of the Bible? We need to do something with it. It is the living and active Word of God. It is not past tense alive. It is not past tense active. It is current. It is right now. It is whenever you encounter the Word of God, you encounter the very author of the entire universe. We're always looking for something else. We're always looking for like some sort of special, even myself, like I when I'm adamantly praying and I'm not a very animated guy. And so I'm even less animated when it comes to like worship and all that. And I got my own thing going on. But there's sometimes when I'm driving normally, like first thing in the morning, like I have like my 30-minute window of energy throughout the day is normally right about 6:30 in the morning. And then I use it up by like 7, and then I'm just useless for the rest of the day. During that time is when I adamantly pray. Like, and there's often times where I'm just like really like I'm on the verge of saying, God, like show me something, like give me something else, like and even those statements, I have 29,000 Bibles at my disposal, right? And that's what God has given us to interact with Him. And yet we have watered down that message, and we have we have sought other avenues to reach people. We have minimized the importance of the Bible. We've minimized the importance of studying the Bible. We've minimized the importance. We've actually turned Bible knowledge into like an insult. Like you call somebody a Bible thumper or a Bible nerd or something like that. Like it's become, But then again, to go back to our point before, we now have this message that is spreading via the internet. So we have two options. We have one, we can let it go and not do anything about it. Can watch this continue to spread, or we can do something about it. I've chosen to do something about it. I would invite you to do the same. Again, I think each one of us with a social media account, we now have a platform. And it doesn't matter how many people are following you. It doesn't matter how many subscribers you have. It doesn't matter how many anything. You're not going to be judged upon, did you reach 1,000 YouTube subscribers? Like, that's like a personal application for me because I look at analytics all day long. Part of success in the social media industry is measured by numbers. And I'm as least of a numbers guy in the church as you can be. Like, I don't care. I just don't care. But even I can look at stuff like that and think, yeah, I was successful because I've reached X amount of numbers this year or X amount of numbers this month. And, those are good things because obviously it means that people are tuning in and watching, and we have a good amount of people that are sharing our content. So that's drawing in new people, and, list goes on and on and on. But in and of itself, it's not a measure for success. I'm lucky enough to have a platform to teach and to help others, and that's what I'm going to be held accountable for. And so I would take comfort in the fact that it's not about how many people you gained to follow you on Facebook, but I think it is about what you've done with that Facebook account. Are you using it in a manner that an unbeliever would look at your Facebook feed and know without a shadow of a doubt that you are a Christian? Would that unbeliever who knows you're a Christian see your Facebook page and then go, well, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like Christianity to me? Or would they have no opinion at all? Again, I'm not saying that everybody needs to have a Facebook page, that everybody needs to. Tom Gregory is here. Nice to see you, Tom Gregory. Not everybody needs to have a Facebook page. You don't need to have a YouTube channel. You don't need to go start a podcast. And if that's something you feel called to do, like, I'd love to talk with you about that. Like, I spend most of my days doing that, is talking to people about starting podcasts and things like that. I love to do that. That's what I'm passionate about. But don't think you have to, right? Not everybody's called to ministry. So just because you're a Christian, that does not mean that you now have to become somebody in ministry. Like, that's not it. But there is a platform that you have right in front of you, that you have available 24 hours a day, that you can point others to Christ. And more importantly, you could point him to the Christ of the Bible, and point these people to solid resources and to help them grow. And before you know it, you're interacting with people in your community and they're saying, hey, did you read this article on so-and-so? And it's like, how did you know about that page? Like, that's what happens, like, when you are committed to using your platforms in a manner that helps to grow Christ. Like, I think about all the people that I'm, like, watching coming in and out, and I see all these names and stuff like that, and like, I can, like, it's real easy to forget. Like, even in being a Christian in the world, like, you could put on your Christian bubble. You could be in a Christian school and go to church 4 days a week and do Christian after school activities and Christian sports and never interact with an unbeliever. And so you could forget what it really means to, be an unbeliever or I mean, obviously you would interact with an unbeliever, like, out and about, but do you really know if they're an unbeliever or not? Because if you're not talking with them about Christ. But you can also kind of get closed off in the social media world as well. I have an amazing circle of people that I could scroll through my phone right now and pick anybody out and say, hey, listen, can I chat with you for a minute? I need prayer, or something I'm really discouraged about. And they could message me and do the same thing. And it's real easy to kind of get into that groove where you just come complacent and you just sort of, like, lose the spark because you're just seeing so much. Like, you just almost get overwhelmed at times. Overwhelmed in the manner of, I don't see any of this stuff, right? And I definitely am not saying that, like, you need to spend hours upon hours studying poor theology, because I think the exact opposite is true. I think you need to spend all of your time studying right theology, and you'll distinguish error pretty easily. But I think it also is good to have on your platform stuff that you are posting that is going to cause the person on your friends list who you've not interacted with in ever, maybe, or years, maybe somebody you went to high school with, let's just say. And I was not a Christian in high school, and so now, like, I have a lot of people that I went to high school with, and they see my Facebook page, and they see this platform, and I've like had interactions with them, and they're just like, I had no idea you were a Christian, right? Well, yeah, because when I was in high school, I was anything but a Christian, but now I am, and so let me tell you about Christ. That opportunity to that person is an unbeliever, and so they look upon they know who I was, and now they're seeing me presenting the Christ of the Bible, and they're well, wait a minute, what happened here? And I get a message that says, hey, I see that you're doing this now, and I'd be curious to learn more. Why? I've talked to this person in what is it, 2020? I graduated 19 years. I've talked to this person, and I probably didn't even talk to them in high school. I didn't talk to a lot of people in high school. And the people I did talk to were at a different high school. And now I've had a chance to interact with that person and share Christ with them. Why? All because I posted one thing on social media. Again, use your discernment of what level that looks like. And I'm certainly not saying flood your timeline 24 hours a day, because then you'll end up just getting unfollowed, and people aren't going to see you anyway. You'll just be talking to yourself. But use discernment. Kind of evaluate. Like, scroll through your timeline. Do that tonight. Scroll through your timeline and take a look and see, and view it through the lens of, if you were an unbeliever and they stumbled across your page, if they were somebody you went to high school with and they found you after X amount of years, would they know without a doubt that you're a Christian? Would they know without a doubt what your passion is? Or would they be confused because you make a post claiming that you follow Christ, and then the next 15 are not very Christ-like? We're not going to get a pass off that. You know what I mean? Like there's not an asterisk next to that stuff. Like, that's, we'll be held accountable for it. And I think we have an opportunity to do some amazing things. Again, the internet has been around for a very long time. It's not going anywhere, and it's becoming more integrated into our society. Therefore, I think we should take advantage of it. I think my computer is literally about to overheat and to completely crash. And I'm surprised, because I've noticed that the video has been choppy, and I don't know why. Something happened in my OBS that's causing it to use up my entire CPU. 16 gigs of RAM, and that still isn't even enough. But anyways, that's all I have for tonight. If you are, I saw Tom Gregory said he's a first-time viewer. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. If you're new, we are every Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We are live. You can access all of our pages, theologynights.com. You can click on the YouTube link. You can click on the podcast link. Or you can search on all social media. You can search on YouTube. You can search on all platforms, podcasts, and everything like that. Search for Theology Nights, and you'll find us there. If you click subscribe, that would greatly help us out, because as I mentioned before, it is all in fact about the numbers, and that's all that I really care about, is getting to X amount of followers. I, of course, am being sarcastic. But we do appreciate the support nonetheless, because the more people that follow us, naturally our stuff gets boosted to the top, and then more people see it, and that's what this is all about, is getting people access to theology that they might not have had access to before. I exposit. I appreciate the encouragement. That means a lot. That means a lot. Appreciate that. So yeah, if I can help with anything, please send me a message. If I can, encourage you in any way, or point you in the direction of some sort of resource or anything I can do, I'm available. Believe me, this is what I live to do. It is my number one passion, and I look forward to interacting with you guys again. Join us next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Send me a message on Facebook if you want. We can chat some more. See you on the next one. Have a great week, guys. See ya.